The screams came from everywhere, behind the walls, down the hallway, even from the darkness inside his own mind. At first he thought he was imagining it, but the sound kept rising, sharp enough to freeze his breath. Nothing about that night made sense, yet every instinct told him to run. Still, something held him there, forcing him to face the terror head-on. The room felt smaller with every echo, shadows crawling like they were alive, and the air tightening around him as if the fear itself wanted to crush him. But survival doesn't begin with strength. It begins with deciding not to surrender. So he steadied his breath, listened past the panic, and forced himself to move toward the danger rather than away from it. What he discovered next didn't just save his life, it changed it forever, revealing a truth far more shocking than the screams themselves. The moment the first scream tore through the silence, everything shifted. It wasn't just a loud noise, it was a sound that carried fear, desperation, and something else he couldn't describe. At first he froze. His body refused to move, as if the scream had reached inside him and shut off every instinct except terror. He stood in the dimly lit room, trying to convince himself it was a mistake, maybe a distant echo or a trick of his mind. But then came the second scream, louder, closer, unmistakably real. That's when he felt the change in the air, the tension tightening around him like invisible hands. He looked toward the hallway, where darkness pooled like thick smoke, swallowing everything beyond a few feet. The scream had come from there, or at least he thought so. The house, which had always felt familiar, now felt foreign, like the walls had shifted and the shadows were watching. Even the floor under his feet felt different, as if the entire place was breathing slowly, waiting for his next move. His heart pounded hard enough to hurt. Sweat gathered on his palms. The silence after the scream made things worse, because it felt like whatever had made the sound was waiting, listening, deciding what to do next. He forced himself to take a step forward, then another, each one heavier than the last. His mind raced with questions he didn't dare answer. Was someone hurt? Was someone trapped? Or was something else in the darkness? As he moved closer to the hallway, the air grew colder and the house seemed to creak like it was warning him to stop. But the memory of the scream pushed him forward. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone needed help, or that if he didn't act, he might not get another chance to survive. Every sound, his own breathing, the faint hum of the lights, the shift of the floorboards, felt amplified. The fear was real, thick, almost physical. And yet, despite everything, he knew he had to keep going. Because turning back felt more dangerous than stepping into the unknown. The silence after the screams didn't bring comfort. It brought a heavier kind of fear. He suddenly realized he wasn't just near danger. He was right in the middle of it. The house felt like a trap, every doorway a mouth ready to swallow him. As he stood at the edge of the hallway, the darkness felt thicker, almost alive, stretching toward him like something hungry. His breath fogged slightly, even though the air shouldn't have been this cold. It was as if the temperature had dropped just for him. He took a slow step forward, and the wooden floor creaked under his weight. The sound echoed, bouncing off the walls in a way that shouldn't have been possible. It felt like the house was responding to him, whispering warnings or maybe luring him deeper. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, blending with the faint shifting of something unseen in the distance. Not footsteps, not breathing, but movement. Real movement. The sensation of being watched tightened around him like a grip on his spine. He didn't want to look over his shoulder, but he did, slowly. Nothing. Just shadows and shapes that seemed wrong somehow, like they had shifted slightly since the last time he looked. Every corner felt like it held eyes. Every shadow felt like it hid a presence. His mind kept trying to rationalize it, whispering that fear was playing tricks on him. But his instincts, those primal, ancient instincts, told him this was no illusion. He felt trapped between going forward or running back, but neither direction felt safe. His legs trembled as he forced himself to move deeper into the hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the darkness itself was trying to pull him down. He could feel a pressure in the air, thick enough to make his chest tight. It was the feeling of something closing in, something waiting for him to slip, to panic, to scream like the voices before him. And yet, he kept walking. Not because he wasn't scared, but because turning back meant accepting the fear. Moving forward meant fighting it, even if he didn't know what was waiting in the shadows ahead. He stood frozen at the center of the hallway, trapped between two equally terrifying choices: run back to the room he'd come from or step deeper into the unknown. His mind spun in circles, weighing possibilities with a fear that made every thought feel heavy and distorted. Survival, he realized, wasn't about strength. It was about choosing a direction when every direction looked deadly. And tonight, he had to make the hardest decision of his life. A faint vibration trembled through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. Something was moving somewhere in the house. Not fast, not slow, just steady, deliberate, as if it knew he was listening. He clenched his fists to stop them from shaking. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to find the nearest exit and throw himself towards safety. But then he remembered the screams he had heard. Raw, painful, human. Someone might still be alive. Someone might be depending on him. He shifted his weight, trying to breathe through the panic squeezing his ribs. Running would save him. Staying might save someone else. And that difference tore at him. He imagined the unknown person trapped somewhere, alone in the darkness, waiting for help that might never come. The thought made something harden inside him. Fear was still there, loud and overwhelming, but it wasn't the only thing anymore. Responsibility, guilt, and a strange courage were fighting it. He took a long breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and made his decision. He wasn't going to run. Not yet. The moment he opened his eyes, the darkness ahead seemed to shift, almost acknowledging his choice. A cold whisper of air brushed past his ear, making his skin crawl. It felt like the house itself knew what he was planning, like it was preparing for him. He stepped forward slowly, each footstep a declaration of defiance against the terror surrounding him. His heartbeat steadied, not because he wasn't afraid, but because he finally had direction. The unknown still waited ahead, silent and monstrous, but he was moving toward it now, not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't live with himself if he turned away. The decision to move forward was only the beginning. The real battle started when he realized just how unprepared he was for what waited in the darkness. Every step deeper into the house felt like stepping into another world, one where the rules of safety, logic, and comfort no longer existed. The air felt heavier, colder, pressing against his lungs as if the house itself wanted to suffocate him before he got any closer to the truth. He reached the end of the hallway, where the corridor split into two narrow paths. The left side was swallowed in a deeper shadow, thick and unmoving, like a void. The right flickered faintly with a dying light bulb, its glow trembling like it was terrified of something hiding nearby. Neither direction felt safe, but he didn't have the luxury of standing still, not when he could feel the presence behind him growing heavier, like eyes pressing into his back. A sudden thud echoed from the left side. Something hit a wall or a door, something heavy. He flinched, heart leaping into his throat. Then, silence. A silence so sharp it felt like it had teeth. His survival instincts kicked in. He crouched low, pressed his back against the wall, and listened. There it was again. Breathing. Soft, slow, distant, but definitely not his. It was coming from the right. The sound of someone trying not to be heard. Someone hiding. Maybe scared. Maybe injured. He moved toward the flickering light, one slow step at a time. His muscles ached from tension, and his fingers trembled as he brushed against the cracked wallpaper. Every inch forward felt like wrestling with the primal fear that clawed at his mind, urging him to run. But he pushed on. If someone was alive, he needed to find them before whatever else was in the house did. As he neared the end of the corridor, the breathing grew louder, and then abruptly stopped. It was replaced by a soft scrape, like something or someone pulling back. He wasn't alone, and whatever had been waiting in the darkness knew he was coming. Still, he tightened his jaw and stepped into the room ahead. Because backing down now meant certain death. The room he stepped into felt different from the rest of the house, quieter, colder, as if the walls were holding their breath. A faint beam of moonlight slipped through a cracked window, cutting a thin silver line across the floor. For a moment, he saw nothing but dust floating in the air. Then the shadows shifted. Not by accident. Not by the wind. Something moved. He froze, every muscle locked. His eyes adjusted slowly, revealing a figure curled in the far corner. At first he thought it was another shadow. Then he heard a small, strangled gasp. Human. Terrified. It was a person. Someone who had been screaming. Someone still alive. He stepped forward carefully, hands raised to show he meant no harm. The figure flinched away, as if expecting violence. It took him a moment to realize why. Scratch marks lined the floor like someone had been dragged, or had tried desperately to escape. His stomach twisted. "It's okay," he whispered, though he wasn't sure it was. "I'm here to help." The person lifted their head slowly, eyes wide, pupils huge from fear and darkness. Their voice trembled so badly he could barely understand the words. "It's still here." Before he could ask what they meant, the house answered for them. A low, rumbling sound vibrated through the walls, not human, not natural. The floorboards beneath them trembled as something heavy moved in the hallway. The person grabbed his arm with surprising strength, pulling him down. "Don't stand, don't make a sound," they whispered, breath shaking. He pressed himself against the floor as the presence drew nearer. The footsteps were uneven, dragging, like something injured, or something that didn't walk the way humans do. Each step made the air colder, tighter. The faint light at the doorframe dimmed, blocked by a massive shadow passing by. He didn't breathe until the sound faded. Then he realized they weren't safe. Not yet. Not until they got out. He pulled the terrified survivor to their feet, guiding them toward the back window, toward escape. The truth behind the screams was horrifying, but the lesson was clear. Survival comes from moving, not freezing. And together, they stepped into the night, alive, shaken, and forever changed.